This third structure is a focused improvisation activity, where instead of creating something that might be more static or a composition that we play the same time, my assignment to the student will be to create something different every day at home. And so of course we'll start doing this in the lesson, and I'll provide that complete structure in the lesson. And then the steps that you have on the screen there and on your handout are those that would go home with the student on the assignment. And in this case, my objective is really to have the student explore and continue to work on the various 16th note groupings that you see there in those rhythms. This is a common practice for me in my studio, to introduce rhythms through improvisation activities and notation activities that lead to improvisation, and then I know that they're developing security with that rhythm when they can create their own music and use that rhythm in their own sounds. So the instructions that I have here are first for the student just to review some rhythms in terms of how they sound. I'm in the habit of using either takadimi or dutta in my teaching, so I've indicated those syllables there. So the first thing is to speak those rhythms, and if you'd like, you can speak them with me. I'll do the first one. 1, 2, ready and go. Do, day, dutta, data, do. Do, data, do, day, do. And then it says to create a melody to that rhythm. It says use a scale of your choice. Often what I'll do is I'll indicate the scale for a student to use given whatever they might be practicing in their technique. So let's see, I'll use maybe F major today. That's a good scale to use. And you know, sometimes they will really just stick to the 5-finger pattern, and that's okay too. I'll encourage them to start using other notes as we go along. So let's see. All right, now let's do rhythm number 2. Oh, before we do that, would you pause your video and you should improvise your own melody in F major to that rhythm. Rhythm number 2. 1, 2, speak with me. Do day, do today, do day, do today, do day, do today, do. Now this time I'm going to try to use a bit more of my scale. Now the next step, it says, is to improvise using 16th note patterns in any order. Create a right hand melody with 16 notes with blocked intervals in the left hand, 5th, 6th, and others. This is a common formula that I do in my teaching as well, just to allow them to freely use blocked intervals while they create and improvise a melody in the right hand. Now this is free. The only structure is that I'd like there to be some 16th note groups. And it's always interesting to see which groups they use readily. I might have to prompt them or encourage them, well, why don't you add in some dutta days or do data? So let's see, I'll improvise, maybe I'll stay in F major. I'm going to stick within a 5-finger pattern just for ease. I'm going to use maybe a tonic and a dominant. Now I ended up very naturally with a 4-bar phrase. My ear was kind of guiding that. Our students might not do something so structured, and that's fine. That structure will kind of emerge and develop as the more that they do this improvisation. Another way to encourage your students to start is actually to use more modal scales. Modal scales, you know, like for instance D, Dorian, just doing all white keys from D and using intervals from there. That has a more forgiving quality to it, and it'll lead to more successful or results for students if they're not used to improvising in more of a tonic and dominant framework. So let me just show you how like a D Dorian would sound. So I would just tell the student, improvise from D using all white keys. navigate in the modal scales. The beauty of this the beauty of this improvisation exercise is that it's really easy to revise for other types of rhythms, for other types of scales. So it can be a way for students to explore other structures that they're working on in a more free environment. And for students that desire more structure, sometime I'll say, well, I just want you to improvise to the rhythm that's written on the page, rather than just improvise freely. Ultimately, what will end up happening, though, is they'll kind of start with the rhythm and then they'll kind of go off on their own path, and I'll let them know that that's okay, and that I encourage that they can use those rhythms to get a good start. The other thing that works well in this environment, too, is to do question and answer improvisation with your students as well in a 16th note structure. And this can be a way to get started with a student before you might send them home with an assignment like that. So for instance, this is often a way that I'll start with rhythms, is my left hand will be the teacher, my right hand will be the student. So I'll say, okay, create an answer to my question. So that kind of structure can help you get students comfortable with it. And if I find that I have a particularly resistant student, we'll start in like direct copy. I'll just say, okay, copy me. Right? And then I'll say, okay, change 1 or 2 notes, but copy most of what I do. So that way we can start from something that's known and then start to add in the creativity. So I will encourage you, if you haven't done so already, pause after this video and improvise. Use D Dorian if that's a comfortable place for you. Use F major if that's a comfortable place for you. Just explore and try to pepper in these various 16th note groupings. Don't judge yourself. Just let yourself do and respond and enjoy the process.